We're in a golden era for NFL wide receivers, where most teams have at least one Pro Bowl caliber pass catcher who can flirt with 1,000 yards every season. There are at least 3 dozen wideouts who stand a good chance at placing in the top 10 in receiving yards for 2020. We looked into our official TPS crystal ball for this one in an attempt to narrow down these 3 dozen candidates to just 10. So without further ado, we present our predictions for the top 10 receiving yards leader for the 2020 NFL season. Number 10, Travis Kelce. The Kansas City Chiefs superstar tight end finished 4th in receiving yards in 2019 with 1,229. It marked the 4th straight 1,000-yard campaign for Kelce, who helped the Chiefs win Super Bowl 54 over the San Francisco 49ers. As great as Kelce's 2019 season was, it actually wasn't anything close to his career year from 2018, when he had 103 receptions for 1,336 yards and 10 touchdowns. Of course, losing Patrick Mahomes for 2.5 games can be cited as a reason for Kelce's statistical regression. At any rate, expect Kelce to be among the top 10 in receiving yards once again for 2020. He was top 10 in this category for 2018 and 2019, and he stood just outside the top 10 in 2016 and 2017. With Mahomes back at full strength, Kelce will continue to rack up the stats as a central component in Andy Reid's innovative offense. As long as he's healthy, Kelce is good for at least 1,000 yards a season. The Chiefs have plenty of offensive weapons that can take the pressure off of Kelce, giving him more favorable one-on-one matchups. We're thinking something in the 1,000 to 1,100 yard range for Kelce in 2020. Number 9, Keenan Allen. We'd have Allen higher on this list if we were only more comfortable with his quarterback situation. We aren't super sold on veteran journeyman Tyrod Taylor as a starter, and rookie Justin Herbert isn't ready for prime time just yet. So if you don't trust the quarterbacks, why is Allen in the top 10 of your projections, you might ask? Well, let's consider that Allen finished 6th in receiving with 1,199 yards last season, despite very lackluster play from quarterback Phillip Rivers. You know, the guy who threw 20 picks as the Chargers fell to the bottom of the AFC West with a 5-11 record. And I mean, we've seen DeAndre Hopkins and Mike Evans put up monster numbers without great quarterbacks before. Why can't Allen do the same? Let's also not forget that Allen was 3rd in receiving during the 2017 season with 1,393 yards. As long as he's healthy, Allen is a virtual lock to place inside the top 10, and he's always a threat to be in the top 5. Hard to guess his totals given the Chargers QB situation, but we'll project something similar to what we had for Travis Kelce. We're going with 1,100 to 1,200 for Allen in 2020. Number 8, Davante Adams. Despite missing 4 games last season, Adams finished with a stellar total of 83 receptions for 997 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's pretty impressive when you especially consider that the Packers have no secondary pass-catching weapons whatsoever. Adams is Rodgers' lone reliable receiver. He draws the opposition's top corner in lots of double teams, but it's still not enough to stop him. Adams was 7th in receiving yards for the 2018 season with 1,386. If he suits up for all 16 games, he should push for similar numbers here in 2020, especially since the Packers failed to bring in any other playmaking weapons for Rodgers. But we expect Adams continue to draw tough double and triple team assignments. Not to mention the Packers are a more run-heavy offense now under head coach Matt LaFleur. He won't be in the top 5 for receiving yards, but the top 10 is very doable here. We'll project 1,150 to 1,250 for Adams in 2020. Number 7, Odell Beckham Jr. The Cleveland Browns were a colossal disappointment during the 2019 season. The Baker Mayfield-Odell Beckham Jr. connection didn't even come close to reaching the sky-high expectations we had set for them either. Thing is, Beckham still recorded 74 receptions for 1,035 yards and 4 touchdowns last season. Not horrible numbers at all when you consider he was playing through a sports hernia, and that Mayfield just wasn't very good, and that the O-line was atrocious, and that Freddie Kitchens was, well, extremely unqualified to be a head coach. When he's healthy and on his game, Beckham is a top 5 receiver in the league. When 1,035 yards is considered a disappointment, you have to be pretty good at what you do. Well, Beckham is healthy now. The offensive line got some much needed help, and they replaced Kitchens with Kevin Stefanski, who did wonders for Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings last year. Stefanski will not waste all that star power the Browns have on offense. Look for both Mayfield and Beckham to rebound nicely, and the pre-2019 version of OBJ shall return. We'll give him something in the 1,200 to 1,300 range for 2020. Number 6, George Kittle. Move aside Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski. Kittle is the best tight end in the NFL right now. Don't add us. Kittle was 23rd in receiving last season with 1,053 yards. It was quite the drop-off from the 1,377 yards he had in 2018, the most ever in a single season for a tight end. But don't forget that Kittle missed 2 games in 2019 due to injury. But when he was on the field, Kittle and Jimmy Garoppolo absolutely dominated the opposition in their first full season together. Without Kittle, the 49ers wouldn't have come within a half quarter of winning Super Bowl 54. Kyle Shanahan has wisely built a large part of his offense around Kittle's impressive skill set. He is a force all over the field, whether he's catching balls for Jimmy G or run blocking for that potent Niners ground game. If he stays healthy, we should expect Kittle to come much closer to the 1,377 yards he had in 2018. So let's give him 1,250 to 1,350 yards for the 2020 season. Number 5, Tyreek Hill. The lightning-quick speedster missed 4 games last season, which cost him the opportunity to record a third straight 1,000-yard campaign. But we're sure he's more than content with that Super Bowl 54 championship ring and all. Hill, who serves as Patrick Mahomes' biggest go-to guy, was 4th in receiving for the 2018 season with 1,479 yards. He was 7th in the 2017 campaign before Mahomes took over as the starter with 1,183. So needless to say, if Hill and Mahomes are both healthy for the 2020 season, you can expect more dominance. On one hand, you can argue that it'll be hard for Hill to put up giant numbers on an offense that includes Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman, Damian Williams, and promising rookie running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but those guys help to take some of the attention off of Hill, and he can only face so many double teams per game. Hill is still a nightmare one-on-one matchup because of his ridiculous speed and athleticism. Hill had 860 receiving yards in 12 games last season, so he'll easily hit 1,000 plus in 2020. We can't quite place him in the top 3 due to the fact that Casey has so many weapons, but he's good enough to be in the top 5. We'll go something along the lines of 1,300 to 1,400 yards for Hill in 2020. Number 4, Kenny Golladay. Even without star quarterback Matthew Stafford for 8 games last season, Golladay still tuned in his best NFL season yet. 65 receptions for 1,190 yards and 11 touchdowns. Golladay finished 7th in receiving last season. He just needed 12 more yards to match Davante Parker for a top 5 spot. The Miami Dolphins standout finished with 1,202 on the year. If Golladay had Stafford for the entire season, you can bet that he would have finished inside the top 5 and very likely the top 3. This guy is a rising star, and he's only going to get better from here. Golladay and Stafford worked beautifully under new offensive coordinator Darrell Bevell. The Detroit Lions will certainly look to run the ball more in 2020, but that's not going to affect the Stafford-Golladay connection too much. If Golladay can post 1,190 yards without his starting quarterback for half the year, then who's to say he can't top that number and finish in the top 10 again? Let's give Golladay something in the 1,320 to 1,420 range for 2020. But hey, we wouldn't be surprised if he pushed for 1,500 yards. Number 3, DeAndre Hopkins. The NFL's 3rd best wide receiver, at least in our opinion, was traded to the Arizona Cardinals in the ultimate offseason shocker. Houston Texans head coach and GM Bill O'Brien had a falling out with Hopkins and didn't want to give him a contract extension. So he gift-wrapped the Cardinals a superstar game changer for a return that was well below market value. Hopkins immediately stepped in as the new number 1 receiver in Arizona, allowing ageless wonder Larry Fitzgerald and youngster Christian Kirk to transition to more suitable number 2 and 3 pass-catching roles. Hopkins just missed the top 10 in receiving yards last season. He had 1,165, but it's worth noting that he missed 1 game. Otherwise, Hopkins could have pushed for a spot in the top 5. He was 2nd in receiving during the 2018 season and 4th in 2017. Hopkins should do wonders with Cliff Kingsbury and promising sophomore quarterback Kyler Murray. The Cardinals will not waste his talents in the slightest. They will build a huge chunk of this offense around Hopkins' game, which is why we're comfortable in saying that he'll at least hit the 1,400 mark in 2020. The approximate range? Let's say 1,400 to 1,500. 2,500. He'll do just fine without Deshaun Watson, thank you very much. Number 2, Michael Thomas. The reigning Offensive Player of the Year had one of the greatest seasons ever for a wide receiver. He led the league with 1,725 receiving yards while setting a single season record with 149 receptions. But as dominant as Thomas is, we just don't see him repeating that magical season. It's almost impossible for anyone to do. The New Orleans Saints made one of the best moves of the offseason by signing veteran wideout Emmanuel Sanders to a 2-year deal. Drew Brees finally has a capable number 2 receiver to complement Thomas. So, yes, the latter is going to see a drop-off in production. That's bad for fantasy football owners, but good for the Saints. With Sanders stepping in alongside Thomas, Alvin Kamara, and Jared Cook, you can expect Brees to spread the ball around a lot more in 2020. It's as simple as that. Thomas will still be among the leaders in receptions and receiving yards, but let's not kid ourselves. He's not coming that close to those 2019 numbers. But we think something in the 1,450 to 1,550 range is more realistic for Thomas in 2020. Number 1, Julio Jones. The best wide receiver of his era led the NFL in receiving during the 2015 and 2018 seasons. He was a distant second behind Thomas in 2019 with 1,394. Fortunately for Julio, there's a much better path for the receiving title in 2020, since, like we mentioned earlier, Thomas has to share some of those targets with Sanders, Kamara, and Cook. Ultimately, Jones is a safe pick for us to lead the NFL in receiving. Losing Austin Hooper in free agency gives Matt Ryan one less playmaker to work with. Jones and Calvin Ridley are his 2 main guys, but the future Hall of Famer is still head and shoulders above the 3rd-year wideout. Ridley has helped take some of the pressure off of Jones, allowing them to draw more one-on-one coverage, which never ends well for the opposing defense. We don't think Jones will push for the 1,725 yards that Thomas put up in 2019, but we envision something north of 1,550 yards. Our guess? Jones hits the 1,600-yard mark for his 3rd receiving crown. We'll guess no more than 1,650 yards here. The bottom line's Jones is poised to regain the receiving title in 2020. But hey, who do you think will lead the NFL in receiving yards for the 2020 season? Join us in that comment section below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton, and we do appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.